Hey there, it's Bram Kanstein, and in this episode of Bitcoin for Millennials, I'm joined by Sae Koo. He's a successful tech entrepreneur who left his life in Silicon Valley to go on a spiritual journey in the jungle of South America. And through deep psychedelic exploration, he's been able to tame and befriend his ego many times. And this was actually essential for him in order to re-adopt Bitcoin very quickly in the past few months after he initially found and also dismissed it in 2021. And so based on his experiences, Tim has put together a presentation that we'll go through in this video. I really invite you to come along and join this conversation because I truly think that this is the shortcut for anyone to understand why they should study and adopt Bitcoin. Even if you are still a relentless critic, I just invite you to join this. And also, if you've been into Bitcoin for some time, I think this video will help you to affirm that you are on the right path in studying and adopting Bitcoin, that you are not alone, that there are other people that have had similar challenges. I found this conversation very insightful and very valuable, and I hope that you do too. Now let's dive in.
It is a true honor to be here because you and your podcast played a huge part in my reemergence into the Bitcoin understanding. So it's a very humbling moment to be in a full circle opportunity here.
Well, likewise. I mean, I just hope to reach more people. So I'm very grateful for the fact that I was able to reach you and you eventually reached out to me. And I think we're going to have a very nice conversation about why Bitcoin is an ego test. And I think it's interesting. You said, like your reemergence, you found Bitcoin pretty early on, but you eventually abandoned it in 2021. To eventually re-adopt it in the past few months very quickly.
Yeah.
And you shared with me that this was mainly due to the fact that you were able to finally challenge your ego. And I just want to start here. Like, can you share a bit about that journey?
Sure. So my background comes from an entrepreneur, a tech founder, and I started and sold a company and took some couple years off. And during that time, that's when COVID hit, and I was starting to hear about Bitcoin. And then I think shortly thereafter, there was a big bull run. And so obviously that caught my attention. So I started looking into it, and kind of falls in line with the quote, like, come for the gains. And that's what I came for. So I looked into it. I was unfortunately a victim to the BlockFi debacle and got caught into that.
Whoa.
But I went into BlockFi first, putting, DCAing a couple $100, and just completely dismissed it because I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'll keep it going and I'll see what happens. And then when the whole FTX collapse happened and all the Bitcoin was gone and I couldn't get it, I was like, I knew it. I knew this was a scam and I'm out. And so I dismissed it and left the Bitcoin world. And then in late 2024, when I was in between jobs again, or careers actually, I had a big time space to just reflect and learn. And I asked myself, what do I want to learn now? And I was like, this Bitcoin thing is starting to catch on to my attention again. And this was right when Trump was getting elected and the big bull run started happening again. So I was like, okay, what is actually happening? And that's when I really started to dive in, listen to podcasts, read some books. And I was like, oh shit, my bad. And in the last 6 months, went deep down the rabbit hole. About 100 hours in, that infamous 100 hours, I feel like I crossed it and just humbled myself and just kept learning and understanding, where now it's a majority of my net worth in Bitcoin. I'm continually putting more into Bitcoin. And I'm just another converted person who was wrong and got humbled, and now fully understanding and still learning, to be honest, still a student.
I love it. It's, I don't know what Michael Saylor says, something like you spend 100,000 or 40,000 hours working in your life and you don't want to spend 100 hours.
Exactly.
Figuring out how to keep your reward. I'm butchering the quote, but yeah. I love that you shared it.
There was something very interesting there too, because I was an exited tech entrepreneur, right? And got some money off the table. And for the last 5-6 years, I was in the career of psychedelics, which wasn't meant to be a money making. It was meant to just, keep it surviving and nice cost of living here. And yet I was investing in the stock market and nothing was growing. My net worth was flat. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I feel like things should be growing, and yet everything around me, cost of living is getting so expensive. My exit money isn't going to last me that long. Something is off. Something is wrong. And that paired with what was happening with Bitcoin, I was like, okay, I should start learning this.
I love that. I mean, it's hard enough, I think, to get started with Bitcoin if you don't feel like you're experiencing a problem. I think in general in the West, things still work. You can still buy food, although the price is going up, right? But I've especially seen it with people who, have for example exited a company and then realize, okay, I spent X amount of years building this. Someone was crazy enough to give me a reward for it. Yeah, how do I keep this?
Exactly.
So I think it's really good that you touch upon that. So maybe before we continue, because in Bitcoin, I say a lot like Bitcoin is an ego test, not an IQ test. And you actually made a presentation about it that
Right.
we are about to go through, which people can find at bitcoinegotest.com. But first, and maybe, or maybe that it's coming up in the presentation and you can touch upon it there, but like, what was the moment that humbled you? What do you mean when you say you humbled yourself or you got humbled? What did you accept that you didn't want to accept before?
I didn't know anything about money. I knew nothing about money. And that was very humbling to come to an understanding. Even I remember when I exited my company, I was like, okay, I have this windfall. What do I do with it? What do I do with it? Do I put in stock market? Do I buy some homes? I don't know what to do, because my whole first career was focused on starting my company, building my company. I wasn't learning about personal finance. I wasn't learning about investment. So the most humbling moment was, I don't know what money actually is. And that's when I went down the rabbit hole and I was like, oh, got it. And of course, there was moments where my ego would be like, well, no, money is just this, or this is what my mom taught me about money, or this is what I should be doing with money, which is to hoard and save in cash, which we know doesn't work. So it was all these little nuances that challenged my ego. But the biggest humbling one was, I know nothing about money. And it's fascinating when I ask people who are in the, let's call it like consciousness space or spiritual exploration space, what is money? They'll usually just say like an ethereal answer, like money is energy. And I believe that, but we don't go further beyond that. Yeah. What is money actually, and what makes money good money?
I would say that's a great start. If you think money is energy, yes, follow that path. Yes. I think you'll come to a certain conclusion pretty quickly. But yeah, so you eventually decided to go all into Bitcoin. You also decided to create something to share with other people. So this is the presentation that we'll go through. Can you give a little introduction while I pull it up?
Sure.
To this presentation. What is your goal? And how did it came about?
Look, I always tell people I'm a forever student in life, and I've been learning about this new topic called Bitcoin, and it just makes sense to me. And, in my last career in the psychedelic space, the biggest learning lesson was how to live a life of service. And so really that's my intention. Like creating this was an act of service, an act of love, to share what I know, but from maybe a different angle and a different perspective. So it helps land for the individual to be like, oh, I get it. I get a little more of it. I understand that. So this presentation does come from a lens of the ego, but specifically even more from a lens of a lot of my psychedelic career. And psychedelic, is an exploration with a altered state of consciousness kind of substance that really tempers or puts the ego aside for a temporary period of time to really ask ourselves the tough questions or the truthful questions. So a lot of this lens today from this presentation is going to come from that, but really from the ego perspective.
But yeah, I love that these insights also came from, your psychedelic experience. And I've shared it before, but, psychedelics have helped me a lot with, my in my life, but also definitely in understanding Bitcoin and I'd say like the scale and the profoundness of it that go way beyond like my personal interest or possible gain or whatever. And that's helped me a lot along the way. So yeah, let's just kick it off. This is basically the first slide.
Sure. Yeah, let's jump into it. And right before I share this, I would attribute a lot of my own psychedelic exploration to the speed of which I was able to readopt Bitcoin. And we'll go into that a little bit later, but just wanted to drop that for some context as well.
Cool.
So this presentation, what I wanted to share here really is, it's really about the money systems. So when I think about money, I think about not only our money beliefs and the stories, which means like this narrative, if we have like, I have to work harder to make more money. I think of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, famously said, if you got raised in a poor family, you might stay poor for the rest of your life, really because of the beliefs and the stories we tell ourselves. And then there's money skills, so everything around personal finance, about investing, about starting a company. And then there's money systems, the fiat system, the Bitcoin standard system. And why I wanted to bring this slide up was that majority of my life was really around looking at the money skills and the money beliefs and completely forgoing understanding the money system. And I think it's because the ego, or how we were raised, already fulfilled that, right? We were told by our parents, this is what money is and this is what the dollar is, and that's it. You don't have to question it. And so this presentation is really touching on the money system and how the ego it's difficult for our ego to look beyond our current money system.
Bitcoin custody is evolving, and OnRamp is leading this change with multi-institution custody, eliminating single points of failure. Instead of relying on one institution, OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a cold storage multi-sig vault backed by 3 independent custodians, where no single party can move your funds alone, providing an unprecedented level of security. Your assets are protected by a 100 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, with all transactions fully auditable on-chain and only executed at your direction. This means complete transparency and control over your assets at all times. Beyond custody, OnRamp provides comprehensive Bitcoin services that include trading, lending, inheritance planning, and IRAs. You can view them as your private Bitcoin banking partner tailored to your wealth preservation goals. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or an experienced holder, OnRamp's approach helps you secure your generational wealth with unmatched security and peace of mind. You can sign up at onrampbitcoin.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. If you first want to learn more, you can also book a free consultation via their website to speak with one of their Bitcoin custody experts. Tell them you came through me, and they'll take extra good care of you. Bitcoin is financial sovereignty, so why compromise when you need liquidity? Meet Debify, the Bitcoin-backed lending platform made by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Debify connects you to institutional-grade liquidity and allows you to borrow fiat or stablecoins, all while keeping your Bitcoin 100% under your control with a non-custodial 3 out of 4 multi-sig escrow solution. Get competitive rates from a global marketplace of institutional-grade lenders, with loan terms that you choose, from 1 month up to a year. There are no hidden fees and there is no rehypothecation, just pure Bitcoin-aligned lending with the highest level of transparency and security. Are you ready to unlock liquidity without ever selling a single sat? Go to debify.com/Bram, that's BRAM, to check out their current lending offers. That's debify.com/Bram. Yeah, I love that. I think we'll get to this, but I had a conversation earlier today, and that was about education. And there are so many similarities to like trusting the institutions for education. It's the same with money, right? Like trusting the institutions that, all the incentives and motivations for creating a correct money are just there, right? Like it feels like if that is not true, like that already feels like a big thing to accept, right? And I love how you illustrated that here. Like there's layers to your understanding, and
Exactly.
we are mostly in the red and the green here, and I think we see a lot of content about red and green,
Exactly.
less so about orange. Yeah,
exactly.
I'll skip to the next one.
Yeah, this is just a quick overview of how I think about, how I want to present this, where I call it a quote psychedelic journey, again, from that lens. But there's an introduction of the glitch. So something is off with what's going on in our current system, where I call it the matrix. And I know you use that reference point a lot, which we'll go into. Then going into the illusion that we were taught or told or passed down with. Then the revelation, what is Bitcoin? Why does it address the illusion that we've always been asleep with? The resistance, the ego resistance, what are we acknowledging, what our ego will say, and how do we temper that and give it a different perspective? And then finally, an invitation of making a choice if you want to choose to learn more about Bitcoin. And the point of this presentation is not to convince someone to buy Bitcoin. The purpose of this presentation is to plant a seed for someone to say, I want to study Bitcoin.
Love that. All right, let's continue. Part one is the glitch.
The glitch, yeah. So I start off here by saying, how did something ridiculed as magic internet money 16 years ago become the 7th largest asset in the world, outperforming gold, stocks, and every single year since its inception? And we see the data here, total asset by market cap as of this month, May 2025, 7th largest asset in the world, right after silver, right behind Amazon. And then the numbers show itself of the compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin versus gold versus the S&P 500 index. Why is it outperformed all of that? And so I just wanted to present a glitch because it feels like it's a glitch. How could that be possible?
Because it's a scam, Tim. It's
exactly. Exactly. The ego will say it's a scam.
Yeah. I use this so much. Like literally just this sentence. The fact that it still exists, I say, do you know how many random internet ideas are released every day? Like millions.
Fair point.
Maybe like infinite, right? Like multi millions every day. Just random ideas get thrown around on random places on the internet, right? I don't even know how many hours of YouTube videos are uploaded every day, right? Like it's humongous. And so this random idea, or this idea, was released on a random internet forum 16 years ago, and it didn't die. Like just that. It
exactly.
is the signal. But I think we'll get into this. Like some people don't see that as a signal, right? But that's the point.
So the point here is to say there's a glitch here. And so I go out to say that understanding Bitcoin, or make the argument now that understanding Bitcoin is less about the IQ and more about our own ability to challenge and the willingness to let go of old inherited beliefs, old inherited programming or stories from our parents, from our generational grandparents, etc. And that's what I'm generally saying, at least for this presentation, our ego. And I threw this picture of the red pill, blue pill, because I know first I got a lot of the idea from you. You always said that before you can orange pill, you need to take the red pill first, right? And I really appreciated that. But for me, I think the Matrix analogy is such a fascinating metaphor to use. Fun fact: I think the Matrix was more as a documentary than a fictional scientific movie. And that's a whole different rabbit hole in the future to discuss. But the point here is that we have a choice, first and foremost, at this fork of the road. We could take the blue pill, which is to stay asleep, trust the system, like you just referenced, and avoid the discomfort of change. I think that's the most important part. The ego likes to protect ourselves from change, from differencing. So this is that choice number one. Choice number two is take the red pill, which is the ability to wake up, to start trusting yourself and your intuition and your own sovereignty of understanding what this is, and start to question everything to unlearn the money illusion. And so here I just give a quick example from tweets, and you'll see there's going to be a lot of tweets and memes here just to make my point visually. But I say, first one here is like this guy who said, why is Bitcoin an ego test? Your ego is a sense of self, identity, beliefs, and how you see the world. It's what makes you defend your opinions, resist change, and ignore new information even when it's right in front of you. Bitcoin's an ego test because it forces people to question everything they know about money. Most of us were raised to believe the banks, governments, and traditional finance were the only ways to store and manage wealth, but Bitcoin proves otherwise. So this is just a level set. Why is Bitcoin an ego test? What is an ego?
Yeah, absolutely love that. I think that is so well worded, right? And of course, I would say it's easier to say this afterwards, right?
Exactly.
So afterwards, you think like, why was I believing in this? Like I've shared this a lot, but like I felt like an idiot when I learned about fractional reserve banking and that money in the bank isn't mine. Like that was truly my feeling, and I think it's like having those types of moments that could make you realize that there is this binary choice where you kind of like, you either lean into it or you're just like, no, whatever. Like, I don't want to touch that, right? Like that feels,
it's too scary. It's too uncomfortable.
Yeah. Nice.
And yeah, the other side, I just, I don't usually term people as losers, but this guy just self-professed this. Losers can win with Bitcoin. I didn't go to college, barely made it through high school, had to work my ass to survive, ended up drunk, wound up in a jail. Bitcoin kicked the door in. I saw it for what it was, an escape hatch. I'm a born loser who found a way to win with Bitcoin. My point here is that Bitcoin isn't so much around the IQ, right? Because there's people who can understand, if they can understand their ego and question it, they can win with Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, that's dope. All right. So why is it an ego test? Yeah.
So why is Bitcoin an ego test? I got this from Jesse Meyer's article of the yuppies dismissing Bitcoin. The yuppie elites dismissing Bitcoin.
Why the yuppie elite dismisses Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I added some elements here just to make my point. So there's a chart here that says, what will the price be in the near future? You have the moon boys who don't really have high IQ that says 250K. You have the middle, which is that middle IQ. There's no way 250K is realistic. And then on the right-hand side at Bitcoin maxis with high IQ, say 250K. So it's just, again, a very interesting way to see that you have two sides of an IQ bell curve saying the same price, or at least knowing what's going to happen, but right in the middle there's a complete resistance to that,
which is also the majority, right?
It's also the majority, correct?
Yeah. All right, let's see. Yeah.
So I said, why do the left and the right of the IQ bell curve come to the same conclusion but the middle doesn't? And Jesse brought this out, which really landed for me, and I really agree, and I try to tie it now into the ego side. It's that the main difference is that it's to the degree of which a person has trust in a system, especially from their upbringing, and thus a reflection of their conditioning and programming. So conditioning, like their financial conditioning and their egos. And so I'm going to go into it later on, but the main point here is just to take away is how much trust you have outside of yourself. Have you given a lot of your power away to?
Outsourcing responsibility is what I call that. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, Jesse brought this great chart here where there's a 2x2 where it's the IQ and the trust in the system. On the top left-hand corner is where a lot of the high IQ, no trust in the system people are at. And that's kind of where I would point myself towards, I self-identify as. But versus everywhere else is where there's a Bitcoin moonism, where it's low IQ, but still no trust in the system that will still understand and buy Bitcoin. But on the top right corner is all blank and white, which is the people who have high IQ and high trust in the system, which are, Jesse makes the point, the yuppie elites who have benefited from the system and don't want to question it because it's very uncomfortable to do so. And where the middles are, where he makes that point, is the typical yuppie elites are right in the top right-hand corner. And that's where these are high IQ and high trust in the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
and this is where that middle IQ are at mainly.
Yeah. And then the propensity for Bitcoin maximalism is then high IQ, low system trust. And the propensity for Bitcoin moonism is lower IQ, lower trust. Yeah, interesting.
Correct. And so how the middle view themselves is the people in the know in the top right corner. And then their perspective is everywhere else, high IQ, low trust in the system, are people who fall for the scam and the Ponzi scheme of Bitcoin. So if you go to the next slide here, I just share a couple examples of the people who are in the know, which are the central banks, the economists, the financial elites, all dismissing Bitcoin, right? They're highly volatile. It's highly speculative. It's the mother of all bubbles. It's a fraud. It's a bubble combination with a Ponzi scheme and an environmental disaster. And then, of course, Warren Buffett famously said, Bitcoin rat poison squared. Well, my point here is that food for thought. There's an idea called the intellectual sunk cost bias, which means I've sunk so much of my identity into who I am, so why would I even consider something else, right? It's actually really scary to question my identity, right? And that's where the ego is protecting ourselves from doing that.
Huge.
I also ask the question, is their criticism informed by genuine understanding or just by the threat of the disruption of the institution they've entrusted their whole life and benefited from? Right. And I do have a lot of empathy, right? And I love how Michael Saylor says, like, explore Bitcoin with love or share Bitcoin with love. So when I come from that perspective, these critics may not fully realize the long-term consequences of their system. It's not out of bad intent, but maybe just because it's very uncomfortable for some sort of deep change or a question of their identity, right? So I have a lot of empathy for that. But for me as an individual, sovereign individual, I ask, who does this narrative really serve? And I think we ask that question, then we might feel a little bit more intrigued to go explore ourselves, because this may just be more of a self-serving, egoic perspective that they might be coming from.
Yeah.
So there's 2 points here I just want to reflect on. Number one is I always introduce myself as a forever student. And I think one of the takeaways here is that if you can choose to understand how important that is for the rest of our lives, then it might serve us very well, because what that does is it always humbles me. And we know it's always around like stay humble, stack stats. There's a reason why the humility or humbleness is such an important part of everyday life, but also understanding Bitcoin. And then the second point I just want to share, you started touching on the empathy part. Like, I think the role of an educator or someone who understands this and desires to teach others or share it, it's like this analogy I like to give is like, you think about climbing a mountain or Mount Everest, and you become the Sherpa because you've climbed it many times. You come back down from the mountain to meet people where they're at so that you can guide them up the mountain. But to be shouting from the mountain and saying, this is what it is and you have to understand it, is not going to do anybody any good. But you have to come down the mountain, meet each person where they're at, understand what programming, how did they grow up with a financial conditioning from their parents or the system they were in, and then meet them where they're at and start to slowly help them unwind that.
I think Bitcoin is beneficial for everyone. So I like that you touched upon the compassion part. Yeah.
Beautiful. So that was the glitch. Part 2 is the illusion. So start to share what's been going on really around the system that probably a lot of us never heard about or learned about or understood. So that's the point of this next part of the journey. So I say, what has been the main hidden programming of money we have inherited? And this is more of a generalization just to make my point here, but I think most of us can agree and resonate. We've been taught to outsource trust. So that concept of outsourcing trust, in this case, to central banks, governments, and legacy financial institutions, and quote, the experts. I think this is such a trap because it disempowers each and every one of us if we outsource that trust without the Bitcoin principle of verifying as well, right? So I think this is an invitation to go back to how do you start to trust yourself, which means you got to ask the hard questions, which means you got to question your identity and everything you know about yourself to go through that journey. And then the second thing I think is also true, and I lived through, is we've been taught money is what we see in the wallet, in the bank, in the paycheck, with your story with fractional reserve, or with me just, keeping in my little piggy bank growing up. I thought that was money and that was it. And so I think this is the programming, I use that word intentionally, that we have inherited. And once we understand we've inherited that, then we can start to question it.
I think this is great. I mean, you hear the argument, it's not real because I cannot touch it, when you talk about Bitcoin or money. And so people are really programmed to think like the thing that I can touch is real money. But then again, I would invite everyone to think about what the numbers in your banking app on your phone then actually represent. Do you think that is money that's in a vault like Scrooge McDuck, and if not, what is it then, right? And I really like that you touch upon this, because this is one of the main arguments I think people use. Like, if I cannot touch it, then that's...
And I think the most modern example is just Wi-Fi. You can't touch Wi-Fi, but it changed our complete life for the rest of our lives. So you can't tell me Wi-Fi isn't real if we can't be connecting on here as well, Yeah. Anyways, just a quick, point here. Money isn't just what you hold. There's a lot more behind the scenes of what's happening and what makes money good money. So you can go to the next slide. So this is where I really think it starts, which is, have we ever questioned what money is actually, or in other words, what makes money good money? And I bring this up because I was just speaking to someone. I've been offering some Bitcoin mentorship as well. Someone recently came to me and was like, I've been taught Bitcoin as a decentralized technology, and I was starting to market for crypto companies. So I get Bitcoin. And I'm like, so how come you haven't adopted it? And she's like, it just doesn't make sense. And I'm like, do you know what makes money good money? And that's where she wasn't aware. And she was like, I don't know what you mean. And so I think this slide is very important as the start of the rabbit hole of the properties of what makes money good money. And so we have things like scarcity, right? We don't want too many of one type of unit because it dilutes or debases our units of money. It's durable. It can last through time. You don't want, like, paper dollars is not durable. You can burn it. It can, you can rip it, etc. That's an example. Immutability, which means you can't change the record, or you don't have to fully rely on third parties. Like example, right now with gold, we have to rely on third parties to tell us how much gold is in the vaults that we haven't seen yet, fully audited yet, as an example. Then we go into portability. Is it easy to transport? Is it easy to use? And dollars is like a good example of that, right? We can put in our wallets. It's easy to transport. Is it acceptable? Is it widely accepted by others? If I had Argentinian peso and I'm in the United States, it's probably not going to be accepted, right? So is it acceptable? And then finally, is it divisible? Is it easy to be divided into smaller denominations? Gold is not a great example of that because we can't shave off or cut off gold every time we want to use it. And is it fungible? Does it mean that it's interchangeable with every other unit? It's the same. There's no differences with that. So yeah, I'll stop here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Just like the point here is the properties of good money.
If you want to self-custody your Bitcoin stack, I recommend the Blockstream Jade Plus. I've been using this premium Bitcoin-only hardware wallet for a few months now, and I love its design and ease of use. What makes it stand out is its open source hardware and software, and Blockstream's unique genuine check, which makes sure that your device is authentic. No backdoors or compromises. You can connect with the Jade Plus however you want: Bluetooth, USB-C, or you can go fully air-gapped with its built-in camera for cable-free QR transactions. The metal case feels solid and the color screen is easy to read, and it connects with your favorite Bitcoin apps like Blockstream Green, Sparrow, and Electrum. Get your Jade Plus today at store.blockstream.com and use code BRAM to get 10% of your entire order. Let's talk about something that not a lot of people think about before it's too late. Where are you storing your Bitcoin seed words? Are they truly secure? I found my solution with StampSeed. It's an elegant all-in-one titanium plate solution with no separate pieces to lose or manage. Your seed phrase gets permanently stamped into pure titanium that withstands fire, survives water, and lasts for generations. Unlike shallow etching methods, StampSeed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, protecting your financial legacy. When you order a titanium seed plate from StampSeed, you can also upload a custom design or your logo to customize the back of your plate to make it fully personalized. Paper seed phrases are a disaster waiting to happen. Secure your Bitcoin with StampSeed for decades to come. Visit stampseed.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to get 15% off your order. I think I was over 30 when I learned this.
Me too.
I think, yeah, maybe that's the only thing I want to say. Like, there's no shame in that. As in, what I realized is that, yeah, I'm participating in a system for money that I truly don't understand. And when I saw, I think, a table or like a list that was similar to this, I think I had the same realization. Like, I have no clue what money is. I have a mortgage, but what does that mean? Like something like that. So yeah, I think it's just this is very basic knowledge about money that, yeah, I didn't know about. No. So yeah, could also be a signal, by the way. Like, why is that? Right?
Why? That's a good question, right?
Yeah.
The next part here is just showing throughout history we've used different forms of money, everything from a bartering system, which is what money really is trying to solve for, right? It's very inefficient if I trade my apples for your cow boots and then I need, food, and then the person doesn't accept cow boots or apples. How do I do that? So money was really to solve the problem of trading and bartering. Then we obviously see some examples of shells, coins, banknotes like dollars, plastic money like credit cards, and then we have Bitcoin. The point here is that we've used many different forms of money, and that was one of the aha moments that I had to understand this as well. I was like, oh shit, yeah, we've used all sorts of money. Of course, I didn't really know because unless I read history books, but I didn't really go into that. So this was just another good little wake-up moment for me that we've used different forms of money in the past.
Yeah. I think another wake-up moment for me was that what we call fiat money, so money that's, that exists by decree from the state and the central bank, not backed by anything, is just a blimp in the history of money. Right? Like, correct. What modern people think is money is
correct.
A version of an attempt of money, but as we just went through the characteristics, it is not necessarily real money as the original definition is.
Right. And so this next slide shows just briefly comparing forms of money to properties of good money, right? So for the example, I'm not going to go into Bitcoin right now. We'll do that later. But the dollar, it's portable, right? And it's divisible. We can do by cents as an example, but it's not scarce as an example. But gold and real estate is scarce because gold, it's difficult to find and mine, and real estate you can only, there's only so much land in the world. But it's not portable as an example, right? But it may be international and durable. But real estate is not divisible. So I'm just giving you some examples. I think what's really good here is just to start understanding there's different forms of money, and then compare that to the different properties of money. Then you'll start to be like, oh, okay, there's like a wire circuit breaker that will start to happen.
Just reflecting on that a little bit, it shows that it's very intricate. Like there are a lot of things that are connected in a way that I personally didn't think about like that before, like how these things are connected.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Me neither. So where are we today with money? And I asked the question I think everyone can resonate in this time and age, especially the millennials here, is why does everything feel and get more expensive over time? Why are groceries getting more expensive? Why is housing getting more expensive? Rent, gasoline, everything feels way more expensive. And there's a great quote I'll show later as a tweet, but we think we want more money, but actually what we should be thinking about is we want more purchasing power. And that's the other paradigm shift opportunity, right? And this chart is just showing like how much, money before would have bought you. So like $1 in 1913 would have bought you, 30 Hershey bars, but now it'll buy you just maybe even one or even half of a Hershey bar, right? Yeah. So why is that? Why is the purchasing power decreasing? Well, we're going to go into that, but a lot of it is just how much money is being printed and thus diluting the amount of purchasing power we have with our dollar.
Yeah, what I learned here is that people talk about money a lot in like a nominal way. They talk about price. They don't talk about value, right? Like they talk about this is how many units you need for a certain thing. And once, if we get back to money is energy, right? If you just think like, have we become better at making Hershey bars in, almost 100 years? Have we become better at, getting eggs from chickens or meat from cows or milk from cows or making bread, anything, all the examples that I've given a lot of times in this podcast. And I think the only rational conclusion is, well, in 100 years, we are probably better at doing eggs.
I would agree.
Right? That's just a flat, I don't know. For me, that's a very logical statement. Like that would make logical sense, as we've seen in the past with a lot of other things. Well, look at the internet right now. We're talking thousands of kilometers away, right, in real time. So if that answer is yes, then you ask the question, okay, but why do I need more units? And that's how I got to, price and value, that's a different thing, right? Like, because the value, like what is the value of a Hershey bar? Like maybe the caloric value, or I don't know, like the value of the Hershey bar didn't change. There's probably more Hershey bars being sold right now than like 100 years ago, right? So there are more. But then why is the price up? And I don't know, like that's what really triggered me along the way. Also just figuring that out, like price and value is not the same thing.
I think it's a great point. It's a great point. And so I say now it's because of the word inflation, but have we ever even asked what inflation really is? I think for me, the easiest way to say it is like inflation is just this invisible tax we're not aware of. Right? There was a great video that came out from Nayib Bukele, which is like the general tax that we pay, the income or capital gains tax we pay, is just to hold up the illusion that we're helping the government pay for services. But really, this invisible tax is what's generally funding everything: the wars, the deficit, et cetera, et cetera. So I just show two simple images. Like, why is it that 1 ounce of US gold coin, or just think about a gold coin in 1933, was $20? And why is it the same coin, that same weight in 2020 worth $1,700? Why? Yeah. just start to ask that question. There's a glitch there, right? And I say here, if the dollar loses value every year and you trade your time for dollars, then your time, your life is also losing value year after year. There's a great quote from Jack Mallers: money is our time and energy in an extracted form. So when it's devalued, so are we. And when someone really just takes a moment to process that I'm getting robbed from the amount of time and energy I'm putting in because I'm storing that into a dollar, and people are printing more of it and losing value of it, then they're robbing me. And I know I can confidently say no one wants to feel or be robbed.
Yeah, I think this is perfectly said. Only thing I would add here is that if you think about that, if you ponder that, realize that your time and the energy that you can expend in that time are also absolutely finite.
Yes.
And so if you are rewarded in something that can be created infinitely, then that is like the dumbest trade that you could make in your life, you know? And I love this picture because it shows that you need more units of the money, and the thing didn't change. You know, the gold coin is probably the best example here. And yeah, you need more units, but does that mean that the gold coin got more valuable? Like what happened with it? Right? Like, and that's the wrong thing to look at. Like, you should look at the thing you use to price it in. Like,
Exactly.
why do you need more units of the dollar?
Of the dollar, yeah. So another way to put it is, what is inflation? It's just money printing by the central banks. And so there's a great, and I felt this, but it was beautiful to see this chart on the right-hand side. Since January 2020, the US has printed nearly 80% of all US dollars in existence. So I like to say, like, during COVID, when we got the free stimulus checks and the PPE loans, that all the companies got free money, was it really free money? Because now what we're really understanding and feeling is that the purchasing power of the dollar has dramatically decreased, which is why we're feeling everything is so much more expensive. And so I say, why does everything get more expensive and unaffordable? All the rent, the groceries, the gasoline, all of that. It's because the fiat money supply, the dollars we have, is expanding exponentially. And especially since January 2020, printing 80% of all US dollars in existence, right? It took 221 years for the US to reach 12 trillion in debt. It took 3-4 years to add the same since 2020. Then that starts to be like really shocking. So this idea of more money units equals less value per money unit in existence, right? And another great quote from Jack Mallers that's relevant here is, no man should work for what another man can print.
When you just dumb it down, right? Like, if you think simpler, like we mentioned before, you will end up at the realization that it's just a piece of paper with a number on it, right? Like, why is the piece of paper with the 1 worth less than the piece of paper with the 100 on it, right? And there is a difference in the perception of what you can do with it, but in essence, it's just a thing with a number on it, right? Like, and even in America, and this opened my eyes, you know, even 6 months ago, or back in October, when I read on like a dollar bill, you know, this is legal tender for all public and private debt, you know, in the US or something. Like, there's literally a text on it that says, like, this is an abstraction of a promise, and you're paying that, you're using that to pay. You're exchanging that in the physical world for something that actually costs energy to create, like a hamburger, right? Or you know, a car or a home. Think about a home. Like, people actually spend time and energy to build a home, right? Like, sun grows wood that goes into beams and goes into a home. And you're using paper with a number on it to represent its value. And if you really think about this slide, then you could come to the realization that it's just units of a thing.
Right.
That
and why would you
name money? You know?
And why would you put all this hard work into something that someone presses a button and can make more of just because they wanted to, versus all the sweat, tears, and challenges you went through to earn that as well? Yeah. And so here, I just wanted to share, like, even newly created money doesn't impact everyone equally. This aspect of the Cantillon effect, where basically it says the people who are closest to the money printer first benefits, while the people further away from the money printer does not benefit, right? And it's like, if I were to ask you a question, how close are you to the money printer? You'd be like, I have no clue what that means for the general person, right?
That's the answer.
That's the answer. You're not, right? Everyone else. And I just gave a quick example here just to dumb it down. In this magical pizza kitchen example, imagine a world where we pay and spend in pizza slices. There's this magical pizza kitchen that makes 100 extra pizzas and give it them to the people closest to the kitchen. And those people then in the kitchen go out and start buying more stuff, houses, equipment, shoes, because they just got free money. They got free pizza slices as money to use. So then all of a sudden the prices go up in all the things because there's suddenly more demand because they just got free money to go buy it. And so everyone else not near the kitchen who didn't get the free pizza now has to pay higher prices, even though their income didn't change. And that's just a rough, quick example of just like this Cantillon effect that the people closest to the printer will benefit. And there's a great chart on the top right corner where it's saying that the total net worth of like the top 0.1% is directly correlated to the M2 money supply. And I think the takeaway here is just ask ourselves, are we close to the money printer? And most of the time it's going to be no, and that's not fair. That's already not fair. So then I go into saying like inflation isn't natural, it's engineered to steal. Your groceries aren't becoming more expensive. Your money is just becoming less valuable. It's not the supermarket's fault. It's the central bank and the printing that's happening. And then of course, the famous Jeff Booth here is that the natural state of a free market is deflationary. And what that means is, you kind of alluded to it already, like the technology is always increasing, right? And making things cheaper because it's improving efficiency. The best example right now in modern day is AI. We know things are getting cheaper and should be getting cheaper because AI is making our life easier. But if central banks don't like the prices falling or have it deflationary, they're going to print money and pump more money in the system to keep things, quote, growing, this GDP growing. And thus this extra money is causing inflation, and that all the prices are starting to go up even though productivity is up. So the result is you're working harder, but your life is also getting more expensive. And again, how does that make sense? Why would someone accept that?
Yeah, I think the red pill here, because I think saying it's engineered to steal, it's a scam.
Sure.
Inflation is theft are rough words. That's a red pill, I would say, or that's a red blue pill moment where you have to think about like, okay, is that okay? Am I okay with that? Or is that something I don't want? And if you don't want it, that's like an extra step further, I'd say, down the rabbit hole. But there's a choice here. Can you accept what the title is here? Or do you think like, yeah, no, this is crazy. There are no other people that would take advantage of me. Oh, okay, that's okay, But yeah, for me, that's it. This is a big point in my opinion.
I appreciate that. And again, we're just about halfway through. I want to be mindful of time, so I'm just going to kind of move through it a little bit quicker as well, but try to make my key points here as well. I love this part because it blew my mind. So I asked myself, is my stock portfolio and my real estate investments actually going up, or is it just breaking even? And there's these great charts here that shows the correlation of the M2 money supply, which means it's all the money existing in the world at the same growth rate of the S&P 500 index. And on the other chart is the same price of real estate prices increasing as well. And I think that was such a wow moment for me, because it's like, I see it growing, but at what cost? Is it just breaking even, or am I actually super rich? And in fact, it's just breaking even right now.
Yeah. So that shows that, the amount of units you have do not represent more value.
Exactly.
Right? If you have more units, doesn't mean it represents more value.
Let's go to the next slide here.
Yeah.
Obviously, the biggest challenge for millennials right now is housing affordability. And we see here that the typical household income is increasing, everything from $50,000 in January 2020 to needing $92,000, a 5-year shift of 79%. So then I ask, is your income growing 79% in a 5-year time frame? Are you making more than double your income in the last 5 years at minimum to keep track with the prices of housing? But what's interesting, and it's like a little red pill moment, is like it's the pricing of housing is growing in denominated in dollars, and we see this great chart here on the right hand side, but actually decreasing in terms of Bitcoin. So it's not that housing is getting more expensive, it's that the dollar that we're using is just getting weaker. And so this dollar debasement is a very silent thief. And so I love this one because it challenges a lot of the financial experts out there. It's like, when they say plug in put in $1,000 a month, and it's going to grow into the S&P 500. It's going to grow 7%, and in 30 years, it's going to be 1,200,000. And you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to be a millionaire. The real question is, what can that actually buy you at that time in 30 years, right? And the great quote on the bottom here is like, you think you want more money, but what you really want is more purchasing power. And this tweet from Anthony Pomp is, the US dollar has lost more than 26% of its purchasing power since COVID around that time. So that means $1 in 2020 only buys 74 cents of goods, or $10,000 only buys $7,400 of goods, right? So you can start to extrapolate that and start to see the real cost of money printing, and thus your purchasing power is decreasing when you're holding dollars.
So if you think about, okay, I need $2 million units to retire in 40 years, yeah, ask yourself the question, what will that buy you if on the right here, this is the actual rate of inflation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can say like, okay, I need $2 million units, but yeah, do this calculation in 30 years when you are supposed to retire. Like, what is it actually worth? Like, what's the purchasing power? And then you'll quickly realize that you'll probably need, and I don't even want to exaggerate, but like 20, 25 times more or something like that in units of dollars or euros. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's just insane. Like, is that going to happen? I think the short answer is no, and you need a life raft. Oh, sorry.
Don't worry. This slide is really just to show, like, the elephant in the room is really the government printing money, right? I was listening to a podcast with Jack Mallers the other day, and he actually said something. He's like, look, I can lecture you as much as you want, but I bet you there's a Bitcoiner out there on a beach just understanding what's inevitable. It's that government will continually print money, and thus it will devalue your current fiat. And that Bitcoiner on the beach is just going to chill in life. And literally, I was on a beach listening to that podcast, so I just started laughing.
I love that.
All right. So this idea really is that when you understand that government will always keep printing money to solve their problems, and thus the dollars that you hold or the euros that you hold is going to devalue, you come from that first principle thinking, you'll start to understand why the current money fiat system doesn't make sense. And so just kind of, this has happened before in history, where Germany, early 1900s, the mark, how it just hyperinflated. And then in Venezuela in the early 2000s, we see their currency in the streets just treated as trash, or some people create it as art.
Yeah, this was a big realization for me, just realizing that I'm just lucky.
This has happened. I'm
just lucky. And it has happened before multiple times in multiple eras of time.
And eras of time,
right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be different this time.
And you just said it, but and the US dollar is the best we have as a world reserve currency right now. But you see every other currency fall against the dollar. So if you know that every other currency is already falling against the dollar, and how much the US is still going to be printing, or central banks going to keep printing, then you start to draw some conclusion that there's a problem.
Yeah. And the dollar already lost its value when shown in the slide with the dollar bill, and these are all against that. So yeah, I'd say that's another crossroad moment if you see this, right? Like, okay, what does that actually mean? Holy shit, I'm in Sweden, or something like that. Let's see.
And so I say, how do we get here? There's a great book from Lawrence Leppard. The monetary system is broken because of the decades, centuries of people making poor choices. Self-interested actors in positions of power have constructed a system that enriches and empowers them and leaves the rest of us at a disadvantage. And I think that's just a very quick summary of the problem that we're in, that's been built in over centuries.
Yeah. If people want to dive deeper into that, I have a recent episode with Lawrence, actually, where we talk about the book.
I love that. And then this next quote from the famous Hayek, Austrian school economist. I don't believe we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of the government. That is, we can't take it violently out of their hands. All we can do is by some sly way to introduce something that they cannot stop. And when you go to the next slide, thank goodness there is a solution. And this is where we start to understand Bitcoin. But this last part of the journey was just to understand the problem. I love Joe Bryan's YouTube video, What's the Problem? Because I think it's it's futile to just say you got to adopt Bitcoin because it's the best, blah 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 blah. It's like, no, understand what is going on in the current money system and know that it's not fair for you, and you probably will get angry about it. Good that you're angry, and now we will show the solution, and that's the revelation here.
All right, this is halfway. We're an hour in.
We'll go faster here.
I mean, maybe to just go back to what you said in the beginning, if you're going to spend tens of thousands of hours working in your life to eventually not figure out how to keep your reward, it's actually, there are so many shortcuts now. Maybe even, this conversation for people, if this 1.5 or maybe even 2 hours, I don't know how long this will go, if this is your shortcut, like, stay listening, stay here and follow along, because if you've been triggered along the way into thinking like, I didn't know this, or I thought it was different, or what are these guys talking about, just hang in there maybe for another hour, and we'll promise that this is the shortcut that you can actually get, I'd say, to
if there's any consolation prize, I've done this presentation once, and a few people who have understood Bitcoin was like, this lands for me. This makes a lot more sense. So
all right,
a little consolation prize. So I go into now why Bitcoin. Number one, it's the first, I call it perfect money, where we look at the previous properties of good money, where it's scarce. There's a fixed supply. There's only going to be 21 million coins minus 3 to 4 million that have already been lost and gone. So this is forever scarce. All right. It's portable. It's easy to move and store and pay and spend with technology. It's like, imagine sending an email. It's as easy as sending an email. It's like sending Bitcoin and using that to spend, probably even easier. It's divisible, right? There's these units called Satoshis that are 100 million Satoshis equals one whole Bitcoin, which means you don't ever have to buy one whole Bitcoin if you want to get started. That's why you start to see people say, get to 1.1 Bitcoin. It's infinitely divisible. It's durable, which means it's software code, which means that it'll last through time and space, right? There's no deterioration or entropy decay, as Michael Saylor says. There's nothing that will have it so that it won't be able to exist in the future. And just other ones, it's acceptable, maybe not fully yet in this whole world, but starting to. More and more people are starting to be able to accept that. We're not fully there yet, but it's starting to happen. But the more important one is censorship resistant. We're going to go into another quality of why Bitcoin is superior. It's that once you hold it, you have the keys to your coin. No one can take it from you, right? And I'll go into this a little bit later, but just starting to compare the properties of good money with the properties of Bitcoin. Next is the first permissionless money. I love this because I never really processed this before, but your money isn't truly yours if you need permission to use it. Like you put at a bank, the bank must sign off on the major transactions. It never really was yours because you need permission. And if we don't realize there's actually a modern example in 2022 in Canada when COVID was happening and the truckers were protesting, the government froze their bank accounts to pause any spending or ability to spend. And that was such a modern example only 3 years ago of government being able to step in and take your money or hold and freeze your money.
Just that, if you think about that, is that something you want? Is that something that you are okay with or not, right? It's again like this kind of like crossroads point, I'd say, where you have to think about, okay, I spend my finite time and energy. Now I put the reward in the bank, and there's now like another person that can decide if I can have access to that or not. So is it truly mine?
And then this is a great quote from Michael Saylor. Bitcoin is the only one thing in the universe that you can truly own. Everything else, literally everything else you have in your life, you own at the pleasure of someone more powerful than you. The real estate that you bought, you're paying property taxes. If you don't pay it, the government will take it away from you, right? You have your stocks in your brokerage account. You piss off your government because of a protest you really believe in, they can freeze that as well. So this is why I think it's just so powerful to understand. I was going to go on the right-hand side. This happened in the United States. The EO 6102 in 1933, FDR asked all the Americans to surrender their gold so they could reprice the dollars. I'm not going to go into too much of that history, but that has happened in the United States where the government said they could seize property to take it away from you. I also then say why Bitcoin is the first incorruptible money. And here's where the whole rules without rulers quote comes into play, or one of my favorite. It's Bitcoin is egoless, which means it doesn't have a founder. There's no marketing team. There's no people trying to convince you. It's just a technology that is running. And why is this important? Well, Anthony Pompliano said the biggest moment in the history of Bitcoin was when Satoshi, the quote inventor of Bitcoin, walked away. And Jeff Booth says 9 out of 10 of people who can cheat will cheat. It's just human nature. It's the ego. And so Bitcoin takes out the corruption of humans because the humans that created it stepped away to create a new fair system. That is the biggest difference I immediately always come to as first principles of Bitcoin versus all the other cryptos and tokens out there. So next I say why Bitcoin is the first absolute scarce money. And the key word is absolute scarce. We know that there's 21 million in supply. There's a schedule for which it will come out in the next 100 some years by 2140. But Jack Mallers said this: Bitcoin is the only thing in the world where more demand cannot create more supply, right? If we want more iPhones, we'll make more iPhones. If we want more gold, we'll go dig up more gold. If we want more real estate, we'll go dig underground and create more real estate, or in the ocean, or build high up as well. And so Jesse Meyer said, Bitcoin is a once in a species, once in a humanity invention of perfect digital scarcity. And I think just, again, this moment of understanding, like, why is absolute scarcity important? It's because then it won't be able to dilute the money that you hold. So yeah, just saying here, there will always, the government will always find a, so everyone will always have a way to print more money. The government will always find a way. But yeah, there's a great chart just to see 15 years ago and then total money supply versus now. And then if there's more money supply, the amount of money you have relative to that is much less. But Bitcoin stays the same. And like I said before, they will always find a way to print more money, all the wars, all the COVIDs, or whatever happens. So they'll always print more money, right? So when we think about perfect money, then it's not only scarce or finite, but also desirable. I think is a great part where it's like, if I create a art piece and it's scarce, only one limited edition, but no one wants it, it's not good money. So the fact that there's desirable qualities of the money that I just shared, plus the scarcity, is what makes it perfect money. And then the great example here, if God created money, what would it be like? I don't know if you've seen this before, but it says it would be universal, incorruptible, and fair. It would store value, immune to inflation or manipulation, and equally accessible to all. It would eliminate inequality driven by monetary systems, fostering trust and transparency. The money would transcend physical form, operating flawlessly across all borders and cultures, enabling seamless trade and aligning human incentives toward cooperation and sustainability. It would encourage ethical behavior by reflecting divine principles of justice and abundance. Does that remind you of anything? Okay, part 4, we're almost done here. The resistance. And this is where we start to talk about the ego. The ego will come alive and say, this doesn't make sense. It's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme, et cetera, et cetera. So I say here, why does Bitcoin trigger the ego? It's because it forces humility. It's asking us to be humble, right? You can be smart and high IQ and still not get it. We spoke about that in the beginning. It shatters old beliefs, right? Accepting Bitcoin means admitting that what we knew and inherited about money might have been wrong. It challenges authority. We've trusted banks and the experts and the governments our whole life. Bitcoin says, trust yourself now. And it tests patience and discipline, right? In a fiat-based world, we want quick wins because we're already suffering a lot from the increased prices. So we're saying we want quick wins, but Bitcoin rewards long-term thinking and emotional mastery, and that triggers the ego. And then lastly, it demands self-responsibility. You reclaim your freedom by holding the keys to your money. You become the bank, but that becomes so scary because we've always outsourced that for others.
I think it's, I think it's definitely these 5 things. Perhaps there are more, right? Where people actually feel like, okay, yeah, this actually is something I could dive deeper into. And I think you then also eventually find the other points, right? But there's also like there's always like one thing that kind of like spikes, or like, is more prominent, that triggers people into eventually finding the other ones.
So I make the point that Bitcoin's hard to see because it requires an ego death. And ego death can be very, like, it has many definitions, but it's interesting that Jeff Booth's, venture firm is called Ego Death Capital, because he understands that to understand Bitcoin, it requires an ego death, which means how do we choose to allow ourselves to see this as see something as from a whole different perspective? Can we detach the identity of our programming and the systems that we've been in for just a moment and welcome a different possibility? That's what I mean by ego death. And this journey of denial first, Bitcoin's a scam, to then confusion, it's too volatile, to then bargaining, saying like maybe stocks and real estate are safer, to maybe depression of like I'm too late to Bitcoin, and then finally acceptance that understanding Bitcoin is the way to opt out of a system that's rigged against me. So that's what I mean by this like journey of an ego death that typically stops us from understanding something like Bitcoin. So first is denial. Isn't Bitcoin a bubble and a Ponzi scheme? There's a great chart that shows all the other bubbles that happened, but now 16 years into Bitcoin, we're still seeing it growing and not stopping with now corporate adoption and US adoption. The timeline starts to speak for itself, and all the other charts that show its continual adoption. And then which one is the Ponzi scheme? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, what I like is that a bubble only happens once, is what I read one time. And Bitcoin has died, I don't know how many times,
And it's resurrected every other time.
Yes, exactly. So it didn't die. Maybe that's a signal.
And then which one's a Ponzi scheme? One with unlimited supply, not backed by anything and centrally controlled, or one that has fixed supply, backed by energy. That's a whole other rabbit hole, and no one can control it. And then the other denial is, won't there be another Bitcoin 2.0? And I think this is where Jesse made a great point. Digital scarcity is a one-time phenomenon, which basically means that every other coin that comes up will face this impossible paradox, which is you can't catch Bitcoin without a leadership team and a marketing budget. But with the leadership team and a marketing budget, you're a centralized company that has to compete with Bitcoin as a decentralized network, right?
Yeah.
And Lynn Alden said this really well. She said, the main exception of the rule of newer technology being better is this idea of communication protocols. And the easiest example is the age of internet. There isn't an internet 2.0, right? Because it's achieved this network effect, and they're really simple. And thus this Bitcoin is this communication protocol for money. So I really like that point, because I think as a techie, we think there's something always should be better and disrupt it, but there's really something really unique about Bitcoin as a digital scarcity and as a communication protocol for money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great that you're touching upon this. I actually have a similar podcast like this with Jesse, where we go through the thread where these images are from. It's a few episodes back. I think it's called something like why you can't copy Bitcoin, or right. You can't copy Bitcoin. That's why crypto is dead. So if people want to listen to that, you can check that out in my library.
So we obviously hear the most confusion part here is Bitcoin is too volatile. And we know based on charts, if you want to zoom out or zoom in, days will look volatile, months will look less volatile, and years will always look like a nice banana. And there's a reason for that, and I'll share a little bit more as well. And we always hear this quote, Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom. And so what that means is, with the amount of printing that will always happen when it's denominated in fiat, Bitcoin's price will always keep going up because we'll always keep printing more money. And the main point here, though, is that volatility isn't a flaw. It's a signature of a revolutionary technology in its growth phase. So here we show the different revolutionary technologies: electricity, the internet, social media. All of it were volatile. We just don't necessarily have understood it in that way. But volatility in this case was like, do people understand it? Do they resist it? Do they fight against it? Do they spread fear on it? These were all volatile. And I'll show you some examples as a next slide. And this is where your, I think, meme starts to come into as well.
Yeah. This is my chart. This is my chart. These are my emojis. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So I say it's not just volatile, but the volatility is it's happening because it's getting mocked. There's fear, uncertainty, and doubts on that. But every technology or invention has gone through that stage, right? Everything from the fire to the candle to the light bulb, or as yours the picture frame to the camera, to the video camera, to the iPhone, and then on the bottom the seashell to the abacus, to the, or is that an abacus, to the coin, to the dollars, to the credit card, and then Bitcoin, right? And then on the right hand side, just internet is just a passing fad, as millions will give up on it, as an example of it being mocked, and that's why there's going to be that volatility even when adopting something as disruptive as the internet. And so this is where the gradually and suddenly you started to mention, where an example of that is in the 1900s when there was one car and tons of horses. And then within 13 years, there was only one horse and tons of cars. And we see on this chart from Lawrence Leppard's book that there's a tipping point where between 1900 and 1930, the shift from horse-drawn carriage to motorized transport followed what this Malcolm Gladwell says, the tipping point, where the time from 0 to 10% adoption is the same amount of time from 10 to 90% adoption. I think that's just such a unique way to understand this gradually and then suddenly, as you started to allude to. And I would say any of the new technology inventions required courage. And that's the same thing with Bitcoin. You need courage to surpass the ego or put the ego aside to understand that. So next, then the ego will say, well, we'll bargain with you. Well, what about stocks, bonds, and golds and real estate? And this is actually what I got from your conversation with Chris from Wealth Squad. Debating against the best fiat investment, stocks, real estate, bonds, is like choosing which luxury suite to choose on a sinking fiat Titanic.
I love that. Yeah. So this is also why Bitcoin is not a hedge, right? Like Bitcoin is not part of this fiat system. It's a totally new system. And that was one of my biggest moments where I just realized I'm moving to another system.
Exactly.
Like I'm moving my economic energy stored in a certain system that I don't understand to something that I increasingly do understand and that I can also actually verify for myself, right? So just visualizing that, moving that energy, the economic energy, to a different system is what really got me further in my thinking. Like it's a different boat. It's, to stay with the image here, like it's a different boat. And that is just, I think, how simple you could think about it.
And then the ego will be depressed. I'm too late to Bitcoin, right? And the great charts from River showing that we're about 3% adoption in Bitcoin in 2025, which means equivalent to online banking in 1996, social media in 2005, and that's 1 year after Facebook started, or internet in the 1990s when we were on dial-up modem, or even earlier than that. So Lawrence said in his book, Bitcoin is at the AOL stage, the American online stage of the internet's development. So we're still early, right? We still have a lot of adoption to go. And that should start to soothe the ego to say, I'm too late to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We're currently in this store of value phase. I think there's various arguments here, but just for me to understand it, there's these 3 phases of store of value. And once we understand that it's becoming a store of value, which is why it's being called digital gold, then the price will start to stabilize, and then we can start to use it a lot more effectively as a medium of exchange for the general public, I would say, the mass society. And then we'll start to think and denominate prices in terms of Bitcoin as a unit of account. But we're currently in that store of value phase, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said, Bitcoin's not an investment. I completely agree. It's a savings technology. And I tell my friends when they're like, Bitcoin an investment, I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. I'm like, you can invest in Bitcoin, but just know that investment means there's an exit strategy, which means you're going to then buy more fiat, which is the exact system that is broken already.
Yes.
You're escaping the whole system by treating it as the savings technology.
Yes.
And I say here, there's still a 10 to
interrupt, but saving is like saving as in money saving, but also saving yourself.
Both. I love that. And I do believe, and the charts here from Jesse, recently updated in 2025, shows that there's still a 10x to 100x growth potential. And what this chart is trying to share with you is, I know we often look at the price at the 90K, 100K mark, and it's like, oh, why isn't it growing and this and that? But if you zoom out, I think the people are really taught me to look at it in terms of how much money is there total in the world right now. And there's 1,000 trillion or one quadrillion. And of course, like example, in the stock market, 135 trillion, or real estate, 370 trillion. Bitcoin is at 2 trillion. And you can start to think about, and this is where you start to consider, is it better than gold? Is it better than stocks? And we started talking a little about this. Is it better than real estate? If you start to make that assumption that it is, which I feel it is, and I know it is, then we can start to see some of that money start to transfer over. And that's where that 10 to 100x growth potential as an asset class is still very, very possible.
Yeah, this is great overview.
So the gold rush, or the Bitcoin gold rush, as Michael Saylor, started in January 2024 and runs through November 2034, at which time 99% of the Bitcoin will have been mined. And he uses the analogy, buying Bitcoin now is like buying real estate in Manhattan in the 1800s. On the second meme, there's only less than few percentage left, 1% left of Bitcoin that needs to still be mined by then, and yet we still have a ton of money that can come in. And so by mathematics,
which is in here, guys, that's the point. The point is that all the green in here is sitting in all this stuff.
The 998 trillion, the 998 trillion in money still coming for Bitcoin.
And the orange pyramid doesn't grow bigger. That's the point. This is like, if there's one takeaway, it's probably this.
Mathematically, you understand what will happen. The price denominated in fiat will continually go up because the constraint of the orange triangle. And then we see the executive order from the US on March 6th, understanding Bitcoin is treating it as digital gold. And really the conversation has really shifted because of that. And lastly, then the journey of ego accepting. So accepting that Bitcoin is the way to opt out of the flawed fiat money system, right? The old model is you work for money, they print it. You save your money, they devalue it. You invest your money, they manipulate it. Or you can choose to save in Bitcoin, and that's it. There's nothing they can do about it, and you can chill and relax and enjoy your life.
What I say here is Bitcoin sounds too good to be true, but it's true.
It is true. Once you understand it, or let the ego go. Last but not least, the choice. This is the invitation. What do you choose? Do you choose, you didn't choose the dollar, you didn't choose the euro, the yen, fractional reserve banking, central banking, quantitative easing, but you can choose Bitcoin, right? And fiat is about allowing the elites to keep printing money. Bitcoin is choosing that no one can print money. And then I'm not going to read through it, but have you ever wondered why it's not enough to just save money, that you need to work double jobs, triple jobs? Maybe you need to learn how to invest and be a trader and play the crypto altcoin game because you need to get a quick pump in money. Why does everyone feel like they need to do that? Well, that's mainly because fiat makes you work and then you need to speculate and then chase, but Bitcoin lets you work and then rest and then live. Right, especially everything we just talked about. But I've felt this pain before. I felt like, why do I need to learn now investing and trading? Because I feel like this money isn't going to take me far.
Like Bitcoin, I don't want to say like it was made for millennials, but we are
we're primed.
Perfect segment. We're primed for it. Like we are the perfect segment to adopt it, and also actually maybe to add to that, to inherit all the value that the people before us created and stored into something that's being devalued constantly. Like if we can inherit that in a proper way, we can actually start building. I love this picture. Like focus on your craft. Like, wouldn't you want to do what you are here to do in your life? Like, wouldn't you want to have like the space and time to figure out, what am I actually here to do?
Right? And that's where quality starts to be birthed more and more.
Yeah. And so if you go to your job every day and you think like, what the hell am I doing? It's only to pay the bills because I have a baby and my wife is expecting me to do this or that or whatever, or I have 2 degrees, I should be able to do something with it. Like whatever your reasoning is, right? If it's something that you don't like to spend your finite time and energy on, you have a problem, and I'd say again, this is a fork in the road. Like, are you going to do something about it or not?
And so now the invitation is to take the orange pill. All right. You can't take the orange pill until you've taken the red pill, which is this ego death, or removing the ego aside first. You get to take the orange pill, meaning that you want to reclaim your power, opt out of the manipulated system, and live in truth. And when you take the orange pill, it's like, I like this great meme on the right-hand side. It's like understanding Bitcoin feels like seeing code in the matrix. You just see the world completely differently. There's a new lens to operate from. And this is the invitation for each individual and the millennials. And I say, I can empathize with your confusion. Bitcoin is everything people don't know about computers, combined with everything they don't understand about money. So I can empathize and be compassionate why it feels so confusing. But next slide, it's not an excuse to stay asleep, right? There's only one force that can put an end to the successes of the state or the government, and that is an economically and morally informed public. And so the invitation is to study Bitcoin. And I love this meme on the right-hand side. Stuff I learned from studying Bitcoin is this huge book, but then stuff I learned from college is this mini notebook. And I feel that after putting in my hours of studying.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize this message, right? I also never say buy Bitcoin. Like, it's study Bitcoin. Like, even if you listen to everything we talked about today, you don't have to believe us. You can verify everything around Bitcoin for yourself. Like, you can do the work. And there's never been a time in history where there was this amount of information around finance and economics and Bitcoin in the world, right? Like, it's literally staring you in the face. And the opportunity is there, and we are on the sinking Titanic ship. Like, there is a need for you to study this.
And so what's ahead for you in your Bitcoin journey is, hundreds of hours of studying, but just to remember that every single thing you want in life is on the other side of something that sucks. So put in the hours and you'll see the benefit of that. And there's a great quote from Michael Saylor: "I have never met any critic who spent 100 hours studying Bitcoin." And this is a little invitation. Remember, Bitcoin only, not crypto. To be honest, though, everybody needs to learn their own lesson on why Bitcoin only. But what I can share is crypto means everyone can print money and exploit and extract from others. Bitcoin means no one can print money and everyone can actually win together. And I love this thought from Guy from Swan. He says, "Why are all crypto advertisements adjacent to sports gambling and loud influencers, while Bitcoin has no marketing team and intellectual educators teaching?" Fix the money, fix the world. We hear this a lot. I think main thing here is that, I don't participate in any political party. I just look at root causes. And Lawrence said this really well. It's like, just the politicians are not looking at the root cause of what's actually happening, right? And it's like, you realize that all political debates are just addressing the symptoms and not the root cause of a flawed money system. That's the invitation to look at. And then the final slide here, and I got this actually from your other podcast, so kudos to Tom.
Yeah, I love this, Tom.
And I want to close with this. I think it's so powerful. And I actually re-listened to this 3 times when you were like, wait, this is it. This is everything. So it says, what happens if the world adopts perfect money like Bitcoin? We go back to a place where people can offer their community their personal highest and best use. Whereas right now, people go make decisions on what to do as a career, many times with the association of the highest possible income. For example, a lot of people go into finance because they know in the finance industry, there's a lot of money to be made, but it burns the soul whether they admit it or not. But some of these people that go there are perhaps the best guitarists, the best songwriters, the best bricklayers, the best craftsmen, the best creators of everything in our society. Maybe they actually wanted to be a doctor. Maybe they wanted to be a veterinarian. Maybe they wanted to help kids, but instead they went to go finance to pay their bills. Bitcoin brings us back into a world where everyone's individual, personal, and best use can be what is they offer their community, because the money they earn from doing that will be of value and stay of value. And when you save it, it will go up in value, so that no matter what you are doing, you can build a financial freedom base for yourself, as opposed to now you trade your soul for the highest income job that isn't serving you. It destroys you as a person. You were serving the community as well as you could. I think Bitcoin brings us back to a place living their true selves and being rewarded for it. Imagine when the wise elders return, who have enough savings so that they go to the young people and teach them things. They're not worried about paying for rent and groceries, or if they have money to live for the next 10 years in retirement. What if we had elders who had savings that went up in value? What would happen? Then they don't have to worry about these things. They can spend time in the schools. They go back to spend time taking care of the kids. They donate extra savings back to the community. They feed the next generation instead of worrying about their savings account in dollars that they have. And they're being told by some financial planner they don't think they'll have enough to live. What kind of life is that? Bitcoin brings us back to a better life. And I just want to end on that. I think if you can understand that and accept that, study Bitcoin.
And I'm just thinking like, how positive is this? Like, wouldn't you want to live a life where you're so positive and excited about the future? You know, like, isn't that what everyone would want, right? Like, I love the concept of being anxious about the future, like that no one really knows like how much time they have. And so that having anxiety about the future is a normal thing. You know, but what if there's an opportunity to lower your anxiety about the future and become like fucking enthusiastic about the future? Like, yeah, I'd love to see what happens there. I'd love to bring a child into the world, you know, and bring them this gift. You know, I think it's just so positive. And so I love that's the ender, man. Thank you so much for going through this with me. I hope we're able to reach some people. And I think, you know, you can share if you're up for that. But I always say, like, if anyone who has questions or reflections or thoughts that they want to share, you know, you can always reach out to me, because I think this is so rewarding if you do this work for yourself, that it will free your mind to a degree that you cannot imagine, I think.
And I want to help ground this down. Thank you for that reflection. I want to help ground this down by saying I was a Bitcoin dropout in 2021, returned student in 2024, and went down the rabbit hole and studied and understood this a lot more and did something about it, and just wanted to create a presentation out of the service of my heart. I am, like they say, a pleb. I'm just someone who understanding it more as a student and wants to give back. And so I hope that this comes from, that you can understand and receive it from that place. There's no manipulative intention here, more than I've learned something. It's going to it changed my life. I can breathe so expansively again, enjoy my life, and pour my mastery in my craft. I want the same for the rest of us. And this is me doing that for more people.
I love that, man. And I appreciate that. I also love that anything that anyone does to contribute to Bitcoin is a mutually beneficial expression of, you know, what their skills are. So I think it's incredible that you put this together, and I think it was great talking to you, talking through it. And yeah, thanks so much, man. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope we're able to reach some people. And so, yeah, if you enjoyed this video, let us know. Also comment below your thoughts, your journey, your thinking, your preconceptions, your doubts, whatever. And let's just
tell us what triggered you too. Tell us what triggered you in your ego, especially. I would love to learn that.
if you survive this. Yeah. So thank you so much. I want to end with the question that I ask everyone, which is, what is a core belief that you will never let go of?
Choose love. Choose love in everything. Start from a place of love, in all relationships, all opportunities, all encounters, and create from a place of love. If you can choose love, and that would be my message. If I had the billboard of the whole world for 15 seconds, that would be my message. And when one chooses to start from that place, from a place of love, I think everything will take care of itself.
Fantastic, brother. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights. And I think we should do this again, man. Great talk.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.